Learn audio online with Audio Masterclass. audiomasterclass.com.
Can you copyright a sine wave? The answer is surprisingly, possibly yes. Today I have two real-life stories to tell. The first is of a simple drum loop, and here it is. Clearly this drum pattern is just about as generic as things get. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, so you can't take anything I say as being reliable. But I would guess that anyone who claimed copyright in something as generic as this would get thrown out of court. And imagine if copyright were upheld. How many thousands of songs could the claimant lay claim to? Claimant's got a claim. So, would anyone ever try to claim copyright on a generic drum pattern like this? Well, yes, here's the story. So, one day I got the urge to make a YouTube video. That's pretty much every other day, so that's nothing unusual. And here it is, and the player's going to start from a section of particular interest. You won't have to watch too much of it, just put it on full screen. Okay, we don't need to listen to any more than that. We can tell that it's that same generic drum pattern. And I recorded it using the Stephen Slate Drums virtual instrument. Now, there is copyright involved here, and the copyright is Stephen Slate's company's copyright in the original samples. I've been struggling to find a copy of the end user license agreement. It must be somewhere, and I'm sure that when I find it, what it's going to say is that because I bought a license for this software, I'm entitled to use it for any genuine purpose, which is basically making music or making my audio demos. I'm licensed to do that. It doesn't give me the copyright in the samples because the company will retain that. So I can use these samples, but what I can't do, and I'm sure the end user license agreement will specifically state this, is I couldn't resell the samples or give them away. Because that is a limitation of the license. So that is where copyright resides in these sounds. It's in the samples, and it's owned by Stephen Slate's company, Slate Digital, I presume. I'm a bit confused with Stephen Slate's companies. He's got more than one. But anyway, I'm not going to worry about that. But there is another copyright here, and the copyright is in my recording. So I pressed the buttons that caused that drum pattern to be embodied. That's a word that copyright law uses, embodied in a WAV file. And the moment I did that, then because I embodied the expression of the idea in a physical format, and a WAV file is as good as a physical format, then I automatically get copyright in that. So you don't have to apply for copyright or anything like that. It's automatically vested the moment you create the original work. And you can register your copyright, but that's for other reasons, and you don't have to just to get copyright in your work. So, without this getting too complicated, the drum pattern's generic, and really there can't be any copyright in that. Stephen Slate's company owns the copyright in the samples, and I own the copyright in the recording. So, I've got all the necessary licenses and copyrights to do as I please, which includes using the pattern as part of the soundtrack of my YouTube video. So I upload the video, and what happens then? Well, you can guess what's going to happen. It took just a few seconds. Copyright claim. Okay, here are the details. Let's just put this on the screen. So, the copyright summary and status. It says you disputed content ID claims on your video. Well, that's just saying that I have already disputed this because clearly it's completely bogus. Fortunately, it hasn't impacted on my channel. It doesn't affect the visibility of the video. And the money, what's happening to that is it's going, that's the advertising revenue, is all 2 cents of it, is going to an escrow account. So if the claim were to be upheld, which it will not because it's clearly bogus, it would go to the claimant. If the claim is rejected, which it will be because the claim is bogus, it will go to me. And in the meantime, YouTube's just kind of looking after it. It won't go to YouTube. I mean, they'll get their share of it, obviously, but ultimately the money will go to who actually deserves it, which is me, obviously. So this is quite useful. The content identified in your video is listed below, along with details and actions. So the content used, this is interesting, it's all of that there. So I'm presuming that's the title of the track. I'm going to say that if I'd written a song or anything that, any piece of music, I wouldn't give it a title like that. But who knows? And I guess this person, Doug Bossy, you've got a lot to answer for, mate. I guess he's the rights holder, and we've got some sort of BMI reference number there, and I don't know what the rest of it is, and I can't seem to access the rest of that text there. So how that would work out in a court of law, I don't really know. And the claim type is a quaver, or you might call it an eighth note in North America of the claim type. I think that's an instance where words would have actually been better. So video monetization being held and the dispute expires in 5 days. So what happens is that the claim gets made and then it lasts for 30 days. I've got 30 days to dispute that. So obviously I disputed it straight away. And if the dispute expires with no further action, then all the rights come back to me and any money that's been generated come to me. So that's fine. But otherwise, the Doug Bossy, who thinks he owns the copyright in this, he's going to, what's he going to do? He's going to dispute the dispute. I'm not quite sure of the form of words there, in which case it will automatically go in his favour and against me, and he will get the money. And I won't. So I'm going to say that if that did happen, there's nothing practically I can do about it, because in theory I could. I'm pretty sure I could go to court over it. But the sheer expense of that, I mean, in comparison with the revenue that I'm going to get for this, it's just not practical. So for practical purposes, what I would do is I would just take the video down purely out of spite, because that's spite is it's the worst of the emotions, isn't it? But I made this video, and if there's any money to be generated from it, I want that money. And YouTube can have their share as well, which is all fine. That's how the whole thing works. This person who's laying a bogus claim to a generic drum pattern is not going to get that money. I'm just going to take it down. So my advice to you is, if you're interested in the video, you better watch it now while you can. So the rest of it, this explains a bit more about the copyright owners, and AdRev is an advertising network. And these people, they're not setting out to do a bad thing, so I'm not going to malign them in any way. These systems are just automated, so they've got a system that compares tracks that they have registered with uploads on YouTube, and the dispute gets submitted automatically. I think it probably gets reviewed by a human ultimately, but it's initiated automatically. So really there's no one to blame there. It's just a mistake. And YouTube's system for detecting the content ID system, it just needs to get better over time. So it's not bad as it is. I think it's better than it was. And it's got plenty of scope to improve yet. And I think we're better off with it than without it, to be honest. And here we've got the video itself here. So I can just, I've just got to go back to here to play the movie of it. So we can hear it's that same pattern. There is actually an EQ sweep on that section of the video. It's strange, really, because this video is 23 minutes long. Am I saying that? 23 minutes long. And that video, that drum loop, it comes up, how many times did it come up? 20 times. I can't remember how many times, but I used the drum loop over and over again in that video to demonstrate EQ. And it's just picked out this one little section and the section with an EQ sweep on it. So, hey. So that, I think, covers that story pretty well. But what about, can you copyright a sine wave? This is something that's interesting. Can you copyright a sine wave? So I'm not a lawyer, just remember that. But you cannot copyright a sine wave. You cannot copyright a sine wave. And the reason for that is that a sine wave, that'd be an interesting thing. A sine wave is a mathematical function, and you cannot copyright functionality. I know that because I read it on the internet, and as we know, the internet is correct about all things. Fact. So no, that is true. That really is true. You can't copyright functionality, and you can look up all the references you like, and that's what all of them will say, all the learned references. And in any case, the sine function was discovered more than 1,000 years before copyright was invented. So, this is well in the public domain, and I really don't think that anybody could possibly deny that. The sine wave is in the public domain. Oh, did I play the sine wave? I was going to play it and then I forgot. Just cover your ears for a sec. Okay, we don't need any more than that. But you heard it. You heard it. It does exist. That's important for later on. So, could anybody put in a copyright claim on the basis of a sine wave? Well, yes, they could. So this happened in my famous video, Can You Hear the Difference Between a Sine Wave and a Square Wave? Let me just click through to that. Sine waves and square waves. They sound different, don't they? It's that guy again. Doesn't he ever shut up? So the video compares sine waves and square waves at different frequencies. And he got copyright claimed by a music publisher. And that publisher had a track which consisted of test tones. So they're perfectly at liberty to make that track because you can't copyright test tones. But the automated system, once again, compared their track with the soundtrack of my video, and it flagged up that I was using similar sounds. Well, yeah, these are generic sounds. So the automated system, it kind of got it wrong. So what happened was they put in a claim. It just ran through the 30-day period and it just lapsed. So probably what happened was that someone reviewed the claim and it would have been as clear as day that it was an invalid claim. So they just let it go and it wasn't a problem whatsoever. So, content ID isn't a bad thing. So you can't copyright a sine wave. But what about another kind of audio signal? White noise. Here's some white noise. Yes, we've all heard that before, haven't we? Some people would call it static, but it's white noise. So can you copyright that? It's a little bit more of a grey area. Do you see what I did there? You see a grey, white noise, grey? Oh, never mind. Noise itself is a fundamental feature of the universe, and to try and copyright noise would be like to try and copyright the electron. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just completely lacking in sense, logic, reason, anything. You cannot copyright noise. White noise, on the other hand, well, that's a special kind of noise, and it's placing a layer of, I think you used to call it maths, on top of that. And it says that white noise has equal energy at all frequencies up the audio band. Well, it doesn't just have to be audio, but we're just thinking about audio. So all the way from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, any frequency that you picked out, white noise would be equal in level at that frequency. It contains all frequencies equally. So that explains white noise. Pink noise, which you probably have heard of. I'm just going to read this out. I'm reading from my article here. You might have guessed, hopefully putting in a bit more. I don't know what am I putting into it? A bit more humanity. That's it. That's the word I'm looking for. A bit more humanity than the printed page. Pink noise has equal energy in equal logarithmic bandwidth intervals. So that is my 7-word definition, and that is my 7-word definition, because I looked all over the internet. I couldn't find a really concise definition that was actually accurate. So what they usually say is it contains equal energy. Let me do it like like that. They usually say that pink noise has equal energy in octave intervals, but that is true, but that's just one case. So if you took third octave intervals, it would have equal energy in third octave intervals, or sixth octave, or any fraction of an octave. If you've got equal fractions up the audio scale, then it's got equal energy. So what I'm saying is it's got, just read it again, equal energy in equal logarithmic bandwidth intervals. So you're measuring it logarithmically. So 20 hertz to 200 hertz is the same distance as 200 hertz to 2000 hertz. Okay, that's enough about that. Pink noise. What about other colours of noise? Well, yes, you can have other colours of noise. There's brown noise, for instance. I can't remember what the definition of that is, but what about just picking some colour and saying, let's do hexadecimal CC0000, which is one of my favourite shades of red, actually. It's not Audio Masterclass red, but it's a nice shade. It's red without being a bit too much in your face, if you can guess what I mean. Maybe I'll put some up on the screen just to let you see that. So what if you picked a colour like that, a really specialist colour? Could you claim a copyright in that? I don't think so. I really don't think so. It's just beyond sense, and it's beyond reason. Trademarking is a different issue, because obviously you can have trademarks of colours. So you've got Facebook blue, UPS brown. I can't think of any others just at the moment, but there's loads of them, and they trademark a particular colour for their particular industry. So it's not like they're laying a claim to that colour for every purpose imaginable. It is restricted. But that's another issue completely, so I'm not going into that. So I think I can conclude at this point that there's no copyright in sine waves, and there's no copyright in white noise. So I've just played you those files. You could download my files, my recordings, and you could do with them whatever you liked. Wait, not so fast, not so fast. There's no copyright in the sine wave or in the white noise. But just remember that I said there's a separate copyright in the recording. I said that about the drum pattern. So that's the same with a song, that you write a song and you've got a copyright in the song. The record label records it at their expense, and they've got the copyright in the recording. So they are different copyrights, and they can be owned by different people or different companies. So I do own the copyrights in these recordings that I've just played you snippets of. So in theory, that if anybody downloaded these recordings and you included them in the soundtrack of a YouTube video, I could make a copyright claim against you. I'm talking to you, a copyright. don't hit the microphone. A copyright claim against you, and you don't want that, because I'll get all of your money, all of your advertising revenue. No matter how much input you put into your video, I'll get the payment. Shows you how ludicrous it is, isn't it? But in reality, it wouldn't be practical. It just wouldn't be practical, and I wouldn't do that anyway. I'm not, I'm a nice guy. I'm not going to do things like that. If only the whole world was filled with nice people. Hey, in any case, with a sine wave, it's going to be extremely difficult to be sure that any particular recording of a sine wave was my recording, because if you take just one frequency of a sine wave, there could be more than 16 million different levels of a recording in 24-bit audio. So maybe there could be more differences as well. So it's going to be very difficult to pick out one recording out of a number. And white noise, in fact, it could be identifiable because you could look at the precise digits that are involved. But once you've uploaded it to YouTube and it's gone through YouTube's audio mangling system, and yes, it does mangle the audio quite a bit, no one's going to know. No one's going to know. So, but just to be sure, just to be absolutely sure, those recordings that I referred to earlier are on my webpage, and I've played you snippets in these videos. I've hit the microphone again. I hereby, humbly, irrevocably, forever, and for all time, until the end of the life of the universe, place these files in the public domain. There you go. Anybody can use them, and I can't change my mind about that. So nobody can copyright them. That's almost it, isn't it? I think I've covered this ground pretty thoroughly, but there is one more thing. I did say earlier that I'm not a lawyer. Well, obviously. So everything I say is just opinion. But that's true even of the most highly qualified attorney, or in the UK we talk about solicitors and barristers. Whatever they say is just opinion as well. More highly qualified opinion, but opinion nonetheless. And it's not until an issue goes in front of a court of law that it's settled one way or the other. So that is definitive, unless there's an appeal and it can go to a higher court. Then the issue can go all the way up to the Supreme Court of the land, where it will be definitively and finally decided. Except there's an even higher authority. It's an authority to which all of us, without exception, must eventually humbly submit. I'm David Mellor, Course Director of Audio Masterclass. Thank you for listening.